Chapter 17: The persistence of a myth. From clay tablets to the digital age, in the long history of human storytelling, few ancient concepts have traveled as far, or transformed as dramatically, as the Anunnaki. What began as a theological category in the temple literature of ancient Mesopotamia has, over millennia, migrated through translations, rediscoveries, reinterpretations, and reimaginings. In this chapter, we trace how the Anunnaki moved from cuneiform tablets buried beneath desert sands to modern bookshelves, television screens, and online discussions across the world. This is not a story of hidden revelations emerging intact from antiquity. It is a story of transmission, of fragments, translations, speculation, and cultural desire. And in understanding that journey, we come closer to understanding ourselves. Rediscovery. In the 19th century, for over 2,000 years, the names of the Anunnaki lay silent. The fall of Assyria and Babylonia, followed by the rise of Persian, Greek, and Roman empires, gradually obscured the cuneiform script. By the early centuries of the Common Era, the wedge-shaped writing of Mesopotamia could no longer be read. The gods of Sumer became archaeological ghosts. This changed in the 19th century. European explorers and scholars, driven by curiosity about the ancient Near East and the historical roots of the Bible, began excavating in modern-day Iraq. Sites such as Nineveh, Nimrud, and later Nippur yielded thousands of clay tablets. The decipherment of cuneiform was a slow and meticulous process. Scholars like Henry Rawlinson, Edward Hincks, and Jules Oppert compared inscriptions in multiple languages, gradually unlocking Akkadian, then Sumerian. Among the translated texts were myths, creation stories, flood narratives, royal hymns. And within those myths appeared a recurring name, Anunnaki. For the first time in centuries, the term re-entered scholarly discourse. But in these early translations, the Anunnaki were understood in strictly philological and historical terms. They were described as a class of Mesopotamian deities. Nothing more. Nothing less. The academic framework was cautious, methodical, and grounded in linguistic evidence. Yet beyond academia, imagination was already stirring. Comparative mythology and expanding interest. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw the rise of comparative mythology. Scholars began to compare Mesopotamian texts with biblical passages. The Epic of Gilgamesh and the Genesis flood narrative were placed side by side. Similarities were noted. Differences were debated. In this environment, ancient Mesopotamian mythology gained broader public attention. The Anunnaki, as part of this mythological world, became accessible beyond specialist circles. However, within scholarly communities, the interpretation remained consistent. The Anunnaki were divine figures in a polytheistic pantheon, varying in role depending on the period and text. They were not extraterrestrials. They were not historical rulers in disguise. They were not engineers of human civilization. They were mythic beings embedded in religious cosmology. Still, mythology has a way of inviting speculation. And the 20th century would bring a new interpretive lens. The rise of alternative interpretations. In the mid-20th century, a broader cultural shift occurred. Advances in space exploration, the dawn of the atomic age, and the growing fascination with extraterrestrial life reshaped popular imagination. Science fiction became mainstream. Questions about humanity's origins took on cosmic dimensions. It was within this context that certain writers began reinterpreting ancient myths through a new framework. Rather than seeing the Anunnaki as symbolic deities, some proposed that they were literal beings, advanced visitors from another world. The most influential of these reinterpretations came from authors who argued that ancient texts preserved distorted memories of extraterrestrial contact. In this view, the gods were not metaphors. They were misunderstood technology bearers. The Anunnaki became central to this theory. According to these interpretations, they were advanced beings who came to Earth in deep antiquity, engineered humanity, and established early civilizations. It is important to note that such claims diverge sharply from mainstream Assyriology and ancient Near Eastern studies. Academic scholars have consistently emphasized that cuneiform texts do not support extraterrestrial readings. The linguistic structure, cultural context, and theological frameworks of the tablets align with mythic and religious expression, not technological reportage. Yet outside academia, these alternative interpretations found a receptive audience. Why the Anunnaki? Among the many ancient mythological figures available for reinterpretation, why did the Anunnaki become so prominent? Several factors contributed. First, the antiquity of Mesopotamian civilization gave it an aura of primacy. As one of the earliest urban cultures, Sumer appeared close to the origins of civilization itself. Second, the fragmentary nature of cuneiform tablets left room for ambiguity. Many texts survive only in partial form. Gaps invite speculation. Third, the complexity of Mesopotamian cosmology, multiple gods, layered heavens, divine councils, provided a narrative structure that could be reimagined within science fiction frameworks. The term Anunnaki itself carried an unfamiliar sound, ancient and enigmatic. It became a linguistic symbol of mystery. But symbols are shaped by those who use them. Media, television, and popular culture. By the early 21st century, the Anunnaki had moved decisively into popular media. Television programs, documentaries, and internet discussions began presenting them within speculative frameworks. Images of ancient reliefs were juxtaposed with modern spacecraft imagery. Mythic narratives were reframed as coded history. For many viewers, the appeal lay not in scholarly detail, but in possibility. The idea that ancient civilizations possessed hidden knowledge, that humanity's origins might be cosmic rather than terrestrial, carries emotional resonance. It offers grandeur, connection, and mystery. However, this cultural phenomenon also highlights a tension. On one side stands academic research, careful, evidence-based, incremental. On the other stands narrative reinterpretation, bold, imaginative, and unconstrained by philological limits. Both reflect human curiosity, but they operate within different methodological boundaries. Understanding that distinction is essential. The scholar's perspective. Modern Assyriologists continue to study Mesopotamian texts with increasing precision. Advances in archaeology, digital imaging, and philology have refined translations. Newly discovered tablets add nuance to older interpretations. Within this scholarship, the Anunnaki are understood as a group designation within the Mesopotamian divine hierarchy, sometimes associated with high-ranking deities in certain periods, connected to underworld judgment, a concept that evolved over centuries. There is no evidence within the original Sumerian or Akkadian texts that describes the Anunnaki as technological beings from another planet. On the contrary, it situates them firmly within the intellectual and spiritual world of ancient Mesopotamia, a civilization that grappled profoundly with order, mortality, justice, and cosmic structure. Their meaning lies in theology, not astronomy. This does not diminish their significance. Cultural reflection. Perhaps the most revealing aspect of the Anunnaki's modern journey is not what it says about ancient Sumer, but what it says about us. Each era interprets the past through its own concerns. 19th century scholars sought biblical connections. 20th century readers, shaped by space exploration, imagined cosmic origins. Digital communities amplify and remix interpretations at unprecedented speed. The Anunnaki have become a canvas onto which contemporary anxieties and aspirations are projected. In an age of rapid technological change, the idea of advanced beings guiding humanity resonates differently than it might have in earlier centuries. The myth adapts, but the clay tablets remain unchanged. Memory and meaning. Across 5,000 years, the Anunnaki have existed in three distinct forms: first, as living deities in temple ritual and mythic imagination; second, as archaeological artifacts in scholarly study; third, as modern symbols in speculative reinterpretation. Each form reflects a different relationship between humanity and its past. The Sumerians did not ask whether the Anunnaki were real in a scientific sense. They experienced them as part of a sacred cosmos. Modern scholarship does not ask whether they descended from the sky in spacecraft. It asks what their names, roles, and transformations reveal about ancient belief systems. And contemporary popular culture asks whether ancient myth might conceal forgotten truths. These are different questions. They require different methods. Confusing them leads to misunderstanding. Distinguishing them leads to clarity. Continuity of wonder. What has remained constant, from Sumer to today, is wonder. The same impulse that led ancient scribes to compose hymns to divine assemblies leads modern audiences to watch documentaries about ancient mysteries. Humans seek origins. We seek order. We seek narratives that situate us within a vast cosmos. The Anunnaki, in their earliest conception, embodied cosmic order, beings who structured heaven and earth. In modern reinterpretation, they sometimes embody cosmic intervention. In both cases, they represent humanity's attempt to understand its place within something larger. Returning to the tablets, if we return, quietly and patiently, to the original clay tablets, we find something subtle yet profound. We find a civilization wrestling with fundamental questions. Why do humans suffer? Who determines fate? How is justice administered beyond death? How did the world come to be arranged as it is? The Anunnaki were one answer among many within that intellectual world. They were not isolated mysteries. They were woven into a broader theological fabric. Understanding them requires understanding that fabric. And in doing so, we move away from sensationalism and toward comprehension. Closing reflection: the story of the Anunnaki is not simply about ancient gods. It is about transmission, how ideas travel through time. It is about interpretation, how meaning shifts across centuries. And it is about imagination, how each generation reshapes the past according to its own horizon of possibility. From temple hymns carved into clay, to archaeological rediscovery, to modern media narratives, the Anunnaki have endured. Not because of hidden secrets, but because they speak to something enduring in the human condition. In the next and final chapter, we step back even further, beyond text and reinterpretation, to ask a larger question. What do the Anunnaki ultimately reveal about civilization itself? Chapter 18, The Ordered Sky. As this long narrative draws toward its conclusion, we return to where it began, southern Mesopotamia, in the cities of Uruk, Ur, and Nippur. Clay tablets rest in museum drawers. Their wedge-shaped impressions remain as they were pressed more than 4,000 years ago. The signs speak of gods, of temples, of kingship, of creation, of flood, and renewal. Among the divine names inscribed there is a group called the Anunnaki. They are not described as visitors from distant star systems. They are not engineers of hidden machines. They are not conquerors descending in metallic craft. In the earliest Sumerian sources, they are members of the divine assembly. They represent authority, judgment, and cosmic order. They belong to a structured pantheon in which heaven, earth, and the underworld are differentiated realms. Over centuries, as Sumerian culture merged into Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian traditions, their roles shifted. They became associated more strongly with the underworld. Their number varied. Their functions evolved. Yet the essential structure remained: they were part of a system. They were embedded within a cosmology that sought to explain how order is maintained. The ancient texts do not present a technological mystery. They present a theological framework. That distinction matters. Throughout this documentary, we have traced two parallel developments. The first is historical and textual. It follows the emergence of writing, the formation of temple economies, the codification of myth, and the transmission of stories across generations. It situates the Anunnaki within the intellectual world of early urban civilization. The second development is modern. It follows the reinterpretation of those myths in the 20th century, when speculative theories reframed ancient deities as extraterrestrial beings. It examines how such ideas gain traction during periods of rapid technological change and cultural uncertainty. These two developments intersect not in evidence, but in imagination. To understand why, we must consider a broader human pattern. From the earliest astronomical observations, human beings have sought coherence in the sky. The regularity of sunrise and sunset, the predictable motion of the stars, the return of seasons, all these phenomena demanded explanation. Before formal science, explanation took narrative form. The sky was not empty, it was inhabited by intention. Movement implied agency. Order implied oversight. The Sumerians were meticulous observers of celestial cycles. Their calendar depended on lunar phases. Their agricultural rhythms followed seasonal constellations. In such a world, separating cosmology from daily life was impossible. Divine narratives were not fantasies, they were interpretive tools. When we read about the Anunnaki convening in assembly, we are reading a metaphor for governance. When we read about divine judgment, we are reading about social hierarchy projected onto cosmic scale. The structure of heaven mirrored the structure of the city. In this sense, the Anunnaki are not alien. They are profoundly human creations. Yet the persistence of these figures across millennia reveals something enduring. Human societies consistently personify the forces that shape their environment. Storm becomes deity. Fertility becomes goddess. The underworld becomes a realm governed by structured authority. This tendency did not disappear with modern science. It transformed. In the 20th century, as rockets pierced the atmosphere and astronauts orbited Earth, the heavens shifted from sacred canopy to navigable space. The unknown no longer lay only beyond mountains or seas, it extended beyond the planet itself. In that context, ancient sky deities could be reimagined as advanced visitors. The vocabulary changed, but the impulse remained the same, to populate the unknown with intelligible actors. Such reinterpretations tell us more about modern anxiety than about ancient history. The archaeological record provides no material evidence of advanced extraterrestrial intervention in Mesopotamia. Excavations at Uruk and Eridu reveal mud brick foundations, pottery shards, cylinder seals, administrative tablets. They reveal human labor, incremental innovation, gradual urban complexity. Writing emerged not as a gift from the stars but as a practical response to economic management. Mythology developed through experimentation. Irrigation canals were dug by coordinated effort. The achievements of Sumer are remarkable precisely because they are human. Acknowledging this does not diminish the grandeur of the ancient world. It restores it. When we strip away speculative overlays, we encounter a civilization grappling with fundamental questions. How did the world begin? Why do disasters occur? What sustains order? Who holds authority? These questions remain recognizable today. The Anunnaki functioned as narrative anchors within that inquiry. They provided a framework through which cosmic justice could be imagined. Their assembly symbolized deliberation. Their presence in myth expressed the conviction that the universe was structured rather than chaotic. Modern cosmology, though radically different in method, affirms a similar insight. The universe operates according to consistent laws. Gravitation shapes galaxies. Nuclear fusion powers stars. Physical constants remain stable across observable space. Order is not imposed by conscious beings, it emerges from mathematical regularity. But the emotional response to that order, or humility, curiosity, is continuous across time. The people of Sumer looked upward and saw constellations. We look upward and see spiral galaxies. Both perspectives evoke a sense of participation in something larger. As this series concludes, it is important to distinguish between myth as cultural heritage and myth as literal claim. Myths are not failed science. They are symbolic narratives shaped by the intellectual tools available at the time of their creation. They encode values, fears, and aspirations. They structure collective memory. When later generations reinterpret those myths through new frameworks, they reveal the evolving concerns of their own era. The 20th century, marked by world wars, nuclear weapons, and space exploration, produced its own cosmological stories. Ancient astronauts became modern archetypes. Yet responsible historical inquiry requires restraint. It asks what the sources actually say. It compares manuscripts. It studies language evolution. It contextualizes ritual practice. It resists the temptation to fill silence with speculation. Within that disciplined approach, the Anunnaki remain what the tablets present, a divine collective embedded in Mesopotamian religion. Their story does not end with hidden spacecraft. It ends in the gradual transformation of religious tradition. As empires rose and fell, as Akkadian replaced Sumerian, as Babylon asserted dominance, the pantheon shifted. Marduk rose in prominence. Enlil's authority adjusted. The Anunnaki became one element among many in a fluid theological landscape. Eventually, Mesopotamian religion yielded to new systems. Persian influence introduced Zoroastrian concepts. Hellenistic culture reshaped local traditions. Later monotheistic faiths reframed cosmology entirely. The names of the Anunnaki faded from common speech. Yet the tablets endured. In museum collections and digital archives, scholars continue to translate and reinterpret them. Each new generation refines understanding. Errors are corrected. Assumptions are tested. Knowledge advances incrementally. This process mirrors the broader human pursuit of meaning. We inherit stories. We question them. We reinterpret them. We situate them within expanding frameworks of evidence. The endurance of the Anunnaki narrative, whether in academic study or popular imagination, demonstrates the power of ancient myth to persist. It also illustrates the responsibility that accompanies that persistence. Cultural heritage deserves careful handling. At the close of this exploration, what remains is not a revelation of hidden technology, but an appreciation for intellectual continuity. 4,000 years ago, scribes in temple schools copied hymns to divine assemblies. They pressed reeds into wet clay, preserving their worldview in durable form. They likely did not imagine that distant descendants would debate the literal nature of their gods. Yet they understood something essential, that human life unfolds beneath a structured sky. Today, our instruments measure cosmic background radiation. Our telescopes peer billions of light years into the past. Our equations describe the curvature of space-time. The scale has expanded beyond anything the Sumerians could conceive. And still, the impulse to seek pattern remains. The ordered sky is no longer populated by divine councils, but by galaxies bound by gravity. The language has changed. The sense of order persists. In recognizing this continuity, we can appreciate both ancient myth and modern science without conflating them. The Anunnaki belong to history, to the intellectual landscape of early Mesopotamia. Their story illuminates how one of humanity's first urban civilizations interpreted existence. It reveals the depth of symbolic thought that accompanied the birth of writing. It also reminds us that meaning evolves. As we conclude, the clay tablets remain silent yet eloquent. They do not confirm extraterrestrial origins. They do not conceal secret equations. They testify to human creativity. In their impressions we see the earliest attempt to inscribe the cosmos into narrative form. And in our own inquiries, whether scholarly, philosophical, or imaginative, we continue that effort. The sky above us remains vast. Its order remains profound. Our interpretations continue to unfold. The Anunnaki, once central to a living religious tradition, now stand as historical witnesses to humanity's enduring dialogue with the heavens. In that dialogue, the past and the present meet, not through hidden intervention, but through shared curiosity. The story ends where it began, beneath an ordered sky, shaped not by mystery alone, but by the persistent human desire to understand.
Write your questions in the comments. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for upcoming episodes of the documentary series. New documentaries are released every Wednesday and Friday on this channel.